Hello, everyone. We're just going to give a minute as people are entering from the waiting room. Thanks for your patience. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're all here now. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this webinar on meaningful child participation, moving from doing for to deciding with, hosted in collaboration with ICDI. Hello. Um, It's exciting to have you all here today. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We're hoping to have a very fun and interactive session. Let us know where you're coming from. Um, and yeah, so my name is Jamie Lee. I'm the Education Design Specialist at HundrED, and I'm so excited that you've joined us here today for this insightful discussion. This webinar is part of a series of online events that are being hosted by selected innovators of the Global Collection 2026. So today I am excited to be handing it over to ICDI, who are the innovators behind the innovation toy for inclusion play hubs, which you will hear more about shortly. A few housekeeping items. This webinar is going to be recorded and you will be sent the recording a few days after the event. So don't worry if you miss anything. And hopefully there will also be time for some Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And we will try to get to them, either responding in the chat or at the Q&A session. Yeah. And there are also translated captions in the Zoom webinar. So if you want either English transcriptions or you want to translate it to another language, you can do so by clicking at the bottom of the screen. There is these three dots. It says more, and then you can click captions, and then you can pick a different language of your choice. So hopefully that helps anyone who needs it. And yes, well, without further ado, I would like to introduce Aliosa Rudas, Program Manager at ICDI, who will be facilitating today's webinar. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Jimmy, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you who are joining us today. As said, my name is Alyosha Rudas, and I'm a program manager at International Child Development Initiatives. And I do hear Peter. I'll mute now. Okay, Peter is muted. Good. Sorry for that. So I'm a program manager at International Child Development Initiatives, ICDI, and we are a knowledge-based NGO, and we are based here in the Netherlands. And we work to improve the psychological well-being of children and young people growing up in difficult circumstances through research, training, and partnerships and project implementation. We at ICDI connect policy, practice, and communities to strengthen early childhood development, child protection, and inclusive opportunities for children worldwide. And also here at ICDI, we coordinate the Toy for Inclusion initiative, about which you will be hearing today in this webinar. And at the heart of this work is something very simple, yet very powerful, and that's play. Because play is not just something children do to pass time. Through play, children build relationships, they feel that they belong, and they begin to make sense of the world around them. And for many young children, especially those growing up in vulnerable situations, having access to safe and welcoming spaces to play can be the first step towards inclusion in education and in community life in general. And over the past years, play hubs across Europe have been created exactly this kind of spaces, bringing together children, families, practitioners, and communities. But as this work evolved, an important question emerged, and that's the question that you can see in a slide, moving from doing for to deciding with. And this is what we will be answering together today. And I kindly invite you to use the chat function, telling us where are you coming from, what makes you curious about child participation or inclusion. Feel free to share more details about your work whenever relevant. And at a certain point, we will be opening up the floor for questions. So we'll have a Q&A session, and we will be also using the chat function to reflect on specific items during our presentation. I'll be also posting some links, useful links during the presentation, so that you can also check out the relevant websites for more information. And without any further ado, because I think you are all curious to hear more about Toy for Inclusion, I'll now hand over to my colleague Margaret Kernan, who will be guiding us through the story of Toy for Participation. Margaret, the floor is
Thank
yours.
Thank you very much, Alyosha, and welcome to everybody. We're delighted to share our experiences of Toy for Inclusion today with you, with a particular focus on participation and how that looks like in Toy for Inclusion program. I'm going to begin with just to give you an overview of the vision of the Toy for Inclusion program, the scope and how it has evolved over time. And then in the second half of the webinar, I'll be delighted to introduce you to, the important people who have been actually implementing the Toy for Inclusion approach and in recent months have been exploring what child participation means in the Toy for Inclusion play hubs. So as Alyosha said, at the heart of Toy for Inclusion is children's play. We believe that social inclusion begins with young children's eagerness to play together. So Toy for Inclusion brings services where they are needed, and particularly for children who are most isolated or marginalized. And we do that through working with other sectors by offering flexible solutions for families of young children. And our focus is specifically on the 0 to 10-year-old child and their families. Next slide, Alyosha, please. So we have these 5 overall goals in the approach, and I'm just going to briefly run through them. First of all, we create welcoming, playful spaces, which we call the play hubs. These spaces are intended for children along with their parents or grandparents or other family members. Toy for Inclusion is not a kindergarten service. It's not a place where you leave children and go to work. This is an integrated service for families, for adults with children together. Another goal is to improve the transition experience of children to formal services, whether formal kindergarten or formal school. And as I mentioned, we really like to strengthen the intersectoral cooperation. We believe that the hubs should be close to where families are living, but also close to those other important services in children's lives, whether they be, formal preschools, or health services indeed. Another goal of Toy for Inclusion is increasing the trust between families of different backgrounds, whether it's migrants, non-migrants, families with different ethnic backgrounds. And we also try and ensure that everybody working in the Play Hub reflect the backgrounds of the children attending. And then the 5th goal is something that we've added in the context of, war and conflict, unfortunately. And we really are recognizing the important role that the play hubs make in healing trauma that children and indeed their parents may be experiencing due to war or displacement. Next slide. We build on 4 pillars. And I've mentioned, the integrated service nature, but something else that we keep an eye on is intergenerational learning. So we recognize that young children can learn from older adults in their lives and in communities. We also prioritize diversity and equity. And as I've mentioned, the Toy for Inclusion hubs are very much community-based. So they are close to where children are living. They are very much a bottom-up approach, so local community are involved in their management and staffing as well. We describe the Play Hub as a bridge between home and formal schooling. We do pay particular attention to those children who have a greater challenges in benefiting from or even accessing services such as kindergartens or preschools. So we're talking here about refugee children, migrants, Roma, or indeed children with special educational needs. These groups typically don't have a fair start in life compared to other groups of children in the community. The next slide, please. This is a map. It's often useful just to help you, because I'm conscious that we have people from all parts of the world joining us today. This is very much a European project. It began in 2017 with about 6 or 7 play hubs, and since then we've expanded to 40 play hubs, some of which are mobile play hubs, and we're now currently in 10 European countries. The latest countries to join are Ireland and Bulgaria. We have implemented similar models, this idea of a play hub at the center of community, also in Ethiopia and Uganda. But for today, we're focusing particularly on the European approach to Toy for Inclusion. The next slide. As I mentioned, this started with a European grant, which supported us and our partner organizations to work on, particularly initially, our focus was on desegregation. Unfortunately, Roma children, young Roma children, have often been educated apart from their peers in separate preschools or in separate classes in primary schools. So our focus in the initial 2 years was on combating segregation, bringing families and children of different backgrounds together in the same spaces. But the model has proven itself to be very flexible and indeed quick to pivot or quick to respond to societal needs as they occur. So from focusing initially on desegregation to Roma, then we broadened our focus to all children with a vulnerable background. And then COVID-19 happened, and the approach was very adept at meeting the concerns and needs of young children who were not able to attend group settings. So, it pivoted to offering home visiting, telephone support to families as well, bringing play materials to where the children were living throughout COVID. And moving on from that, we had, unfortunately, the breakout of war in Ukraine. And again, because of that, there were many children and families forced to cross borders to escape the war, in the countries immediately close to Ukraine. So the Toy for Inclusion approach at this stage was a proven approach to have, a positive impact on children's lives. And with support from organizations like UNICEF and War Child, we were able to rapidly increase the number of play hubs to include children seeking support and mental health support and their parents because of the war. So, the numbers rapidly expanded. We also paid a little more attention to children with disabilities. And in 2023, we opened some mobile play hubs, which were, very creative again, set up in trucks or small buses that traveled close to where children are living. And these continue to exist. And then the latest iteration, and this is what we really would like to talk about today, is our focus on child participation in the play hubs. So the next slide, please. Before we talk about what child participation looks like in the play hubs and why this was seen to be needed, this slide just tries to capture the structure of Toy for Inclusion in terms of its the local ownership, the fundraising, the management. So at the heart, you have these, welcoming physical places called the play hubs. Each play hub is typically staffed by a play hub coordinator, one or two other staff, many of whom are volunteers as well. The number of adults involved depends on the size of the play hub. Um, every play hub is managed and supported by a local action team, which offers oversight, support, organizing some local fundraising. And then we have local implementing organizations who are very closely linked to the local authorities and other services that I had mentioned. So the cooperation with local government, with local education services, with local health services is really, really important. Every country, and remember, we're talking about 10 countries now, have their own national coordinating organization. In some countries, that may be the same as the local implementing organization. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined today by the national coordinating organization from Croatia and from Hungary and from Latvia, who you're going to meet them in a moment. And then the international coordinators are ourselves in ICDI, Alyosha, myself, and the overall coordinator, Julia Cortelesi, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. And then another organization, ISA, the International Step-by-Step Association, whom some of you may know, who do the communication and dissemination work for us. And the next slide. This just gives you a sense of the numbers of children and families involved. These numbers show you the average annual reach. So in 1 year, these typically are the kinds of figures that we are reaching across these 10 countries at the moment. You will see that there's also a very high number of workshops and events. So as well as the informal play opportunities, where children and adults can come together, and parents, where they have toy and book library facilities. There is, there's food and snacks. It's a very informal social space. There are also these, a little bit more organized workshops and events on different themes, whether they're around music, creative themes. They could be health focused. They could be more focused on the adults, or they could be more focused on children, like community play days. So there's a lot happening in these play hubs. Each play hub can decide on its own opening hours and days, but what makes the Toy for Inclusion play hubs particularly flexible is that they are open, in the afternoons and weekends and holidays, when many of the formal services are closed. Okay, so now we're going to switch to thinking about participation. This image, we have maintained, our logo. So, we're still talking about, the essence of the play hub still continues but we are now introducing a new awareness of the importance of child participation in the play hubs. You might be asking, well, why is this necessary? Aren't children participating by, playing or by attending these activities? But actually, when you talk about child participation and children having a say and being listened to, about their activities, about their plays and their games, there are many biases and stereotypes in that regard. People thinking, well, we're the experts. As parents, we should decide what they do, or as teachers, and children are too young to decide for themselves. They need us as adults. So in Toy for Participation, we're challenging these stereotypes, and we're more than challenging these stereotypes. we really want to actively promote child participation and democracy in the play hubs and also in the not formal services which are in the neighborhoods of our non-formal play hubs. So we were very fortunate again in getting another 2-year grant from the European Union to financially support us in this important work. So the next stage. So this just summarizes very briefly what we are aiming to do in these 2 years. So we're about 1 year into the project now. So today is a good opportunity for you to hear what has been achieved so far. So we are responding to the gap in the policy about children, and particularly, about children from disadvantaged backgrounds, where it tends to be all about, this is what we are doing for children. We are developing this policy for children. And instead, we want to shift in thinking about, well, we're actually doing this with children. And this way of thinking is actually reflected in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12, to be specific, which specifies, that children have the rights to be listened to and be heard on all matters that affect their own lives. We are working towards embedding child participation as a core practice in the play hubs. And we also believe, that the early years are essential for building participatory skills and values. So we're moving from doing for children to doing with children. So promoting it as, embedding it into the day-to-day lives and the activities of the play hubs, as well as, we're hoping that all our insights, our learning, the activities that we are developing, the methodologies also have relevance indeed at homes, the private space of family homes, as well as in formal services. The next slide. So we can't take for granted that everybody understands what we mean by child participation. And indeed, my colleagues will talk about that in a moment. We do have a working definition of child participation, which is informed by international research as well as on the Convention of the Rights of the Child. And you will hear that, it's the ongoing everyday relations become really important when we're talking about child participation. And we're also talking about verbal and non-verbal communication. And of course, we are paying attention to, what does child participation look like and mean when you're a 1-year-old versus being a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old. Just one more slide before I bring in other people into this conversation. These are the main activities that we are undertaking in Toy for Participation. All of the partners together, and there are 10 Toy for Inclusion partners working on this together. We have collaboratively developed a toolkit which includes, theoretical conceptual foundations about child participation, as well as activity cards suitable for different age groups and case studies from different parts of Europe. Our partners have already conducted training of the Play Hub's staff and volunteers and their partner organizations, and the focus here is about changing mindsets, and opening people's eyes to what child participation looks like when you're talking about very young children. And we're in the middle of piloting this toolkit, and based on what we find out during the pilot and our experiencing, we will be finalizing it and really working towards wider dissemination. And during the piloting, we are getting in an ongoing way feedback from all of the children and the families and the educators who are participating. So let's just skip the outcomes and go straight to the discussion, if I may. Alyosha. So here I would like to invite our colleagues in Toy for Participation. Firstly, we have Marina Matevsic. Apologies for the pronunciation of your surname, from Croatia. And Marina, can I ask you, first of all, to tell us a little bit, like, what does play Toy for Play, Toy for Inclusion play hubs look like in Croatia? How many play hubs are there in Croatia at the moment?
Thank you, Margaret. Well, we now have the experience of opening 6 play hubs. One closed due to some, local conditions changing, but 5 are still there and still relatively efficiently and sustainably running. So we are very proud, actually, to have that situation.
And you have already been working with the Playhub staff, the coordinators, and the volunteers, and introducing this new concept of child participation. Can you tell us a little bit more about the kinds of mindset changes that you've seen during and since the training that you conducted a few months ago now, right?
Yes. Well, having this experience of opening 6, or at that point 5 play hubs, actually, with the help of UNICEF, but also some other donors, we were actually focusing at some point, considering the child participation element as something that we wanted to improve. Play hubs or Toy for Inclusion, the whole framework has a pretty well thought through quality framework, and there are standards, quality standards for every aspect of work, from the staff qualifications and the working with children, and how the environment looks like, how the toy library should look like. It should be available to children. Activities should be also child led or child centered, and so on. But when we were actually, as mentoring organization and coordinating organization, when we were actually visiting the play hubs, we noticed in the same time that there was a lack of child participation in a lot of the elements, including the environment. For instance, just one thing, there were toys, there were so many toys, but children were not taking them. And we were wondering what happened. Why are children not using the toys? And in many cases, it was just because they didn't really know what was there, or they didn't feel comfortable that if they break it, how they're going to pay for it, and so on. So there was also a lot of material, like this predetermined kind of a worksheet coloring material, always the same, that we found in those play hubs, limiting a lot of the child involvement in their learning and playing. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of the things that we found that were connected to child participation in a meaningful way, not just in a sense that child participation is something like giving children ways to choose an activity, but to embed it meaningfully in all aspects of work. And this is when we started with the ICDI, the whole project of Toy for Participation. It was actually a perfect moment for us. So from the beginning of the project, we as an organization, but I think all 7 organizations that were trained to become trainers on national level, in a kind of a joint work with ICDI, we were all in a way transformed in putting together all these resources. The toolbox, as you mentioned, was developed, and now we needed to actually put it in practice, to be not only the trainers in it, but also to help others implement it in practice with children.
And have the children been able to see that their views actually affect change? I mean, you mentioned, that, we have had lots of these toys, they weren't actually being borrowed. So we actually asked the children a little bit more about this, and, have there been concrete changes made as a result of this consultation with children?
Well, we were before the project. We were trying to respond to these, let's say, problems we saw, but there was not that much of a transformation, and that this is why I think, and you cannot approach child participation in just one single tip that you give to practitioners. It should be somehow starting from scratch. You know, what is the power sharing of between adults and children.
Yeah.
What does it mean to participate in your own learning, in your own development? Does that mean that children's safety will be endangered? And all these questions that were arising from the beginning in our group as well, as trainers
Yes.
and project people, but also this all kind of was happening again when we were training the practitioners and had to go through it in order to actually not to understand child participation, but to get a more holistic view over it and implement it.
Yeah, you mentioned there the word power, that this really required us and the staff to think about power and power relations. Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean there?
Well, the majority of the concerns we found also in our group of project trainers, but later on training other practitioners, was whether the children have the abilities to engage in child participation, especially very young children, and whether we need to be in charge as adults, we need to be in charge of everything, and this is a power. So this is definitely, even if we don't call it in everyday practice a power, but it's definitely power over somebody. So I think one quote was from one of the teachers that was taking our training course within this project, was that actually when she realized that power sharing with children in their learning and development was possible, and that when she started doing that without endangering their safety, of course, because she was the responsible adult in this relationship, but she was actually able to contribute more to their learning and development by listening to what they have to say or show or non-verbally express about what they need.
So that sounds like that was a really important moment of insight for that practitioner.
Yeah. This was a kind of a start for change towards child participation.
Yeah. Can I bring in Dr. Yvette Kovacs into the conversation now? Because like you, Yvette has also been working with practitioners, and indeed Yvette has had the experience of teaching an elective module about child participation inspired by Toy for Inclusion and our new shift to child participation. Yvette, can you tell us how was the idea of child participation? Well, I should say Yvette works for an organization called Partners Hungry, another long-standing partner of Toy for Inclusion. So Yvette, how was the idea of child participation initially received by the head of the department in the Teacher Education College when you first proposed teaching this module about child participation?
Yes, before each semester, I have the freedom to choose the topic of the elective course I teach at the university. And based on the work we do currently, I decided to go with the topic of child participation. And I was really surprised to see the reaction of the head of institution, because she tried super politely indicate that as she sees this topic is not that important or not that essential to the training, or it's not broad enough to spend the semester with it, and how much can we talk about it, and what is this whole thing anyway. So it became apparent that they have no clue what this concept means, even at this level in the teacher training. They don't find it important enough to talk about. So at the end, I offered to go with the title Inclusion and Child Participation, as I intended to teach about inclusion anyway, since its participation needs to be grounded in inclusion, and they were happy with this solution.
Okay, so you managed to run this very successful elective module, and you have been gathering the reflections, the insights of the students. So can you what were their experience of the module? How did they reflect on child participation? What came up from those reflections for you?
Yeah, it was a very diverse group of students. Some of them studied to be a kindergarten teacher, nursery teacher, mental health expert, primary school teacher, meaning that all of them had much experience already working with children, as most of them were studying for a second qualification. And this diversity helped us to look at the topic from very different perspectives and having different age groups in mind. The students were very open and responsive, and they all were able to connect what we talked about with their experiences from work, from the family life, and from their own childhood. How it was when they were a child and they were not listened to, and how painful and frustrating it was, and what harms they caused. So the process resulted in a kind of eureka moment, a moment of recognition, when they realized and understood why child participation is very important. And they realized that it is significant not only for the sake and the learning process and the future of the child, but also how it can enrich their everyday professional work and make all their activities more meaningful. I brought two quotes here from their reflections. I'm happy to read it for you if it's okay.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, one of them said that this course was inspiring, and by the end of it, I did not only gain new knowledge, but I also see situations in a broader interpretative framework, which is likely to determine my professional thinking in the long term. And one of the others said that I would have appreciated this toolkit before my motherhood, as it would have given me valuable insights into understanding and supporting children's unique needs. Further along in my career, it will be very useful. It should have been a must for every teacher in the world, but if you don't put it into practice, that knowledge can slip away. It's essential to remain engaged and keep applying what you learn.
Thanks for sharing those quotes. Yeah, it's interesting that this one of the students was reflecting as a parent, and she really saw the relevance, and that's something that we are really working on in Toy for Inclusion in the Play Hubs, that parents are involved in this whole democratic, participatory way of thinking and working. You're joined today by your colleague Eva Deak, who's sitting beside you. Eva, can you tell us a little bit, give us a picture of one of the play hubs in Hungary? Where is it? What does it look like? What does it feel like for the children and families attending? For our listeners today, just to be brought into the mood and the atmosphere of a play hub in Hungary.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. So we have, as you listened to Margaret introducing the play hubs, we have now 13 running play hubs all over Hungary, and it was very hard to choose only one, but I did actually. And the place where it is located, it's called Szihalom. It's a village 1.5 hours ride from Budapest, and 8,000 inhabitants. So it's a middle-sized village in Hungary. And I chose this one because when we established the Play Hub, there was a local NGO there called Little Bear Cub. And this NGO was a very good foundation to establish the Play Hub because it has already provided services for the local children and families, services which the families couldn't get from the state services. And together with the framework, the methodological framework, Toy for Inclusion, and also the engagement of the local action team, a very diverse team of professionals, it worked so well that the founder of the NGO nominated herself to become the mayor of the village, and she was elected. So now, and with this, that the mayor, and this woman is a Roma woman coming from a minority. And with this success, the whole play hub and children and families became the heart of the whole village. So there is no event where one of the families are missing. So this really became a very cohesive service within the settlement. So that's why I chose them.
Yeah, that's a beautiful illustration. I mean, we talk about the hub being the heart of every community, and this literally is what has happened here. And we're seeing that this democratic participation of communities that are not often recognized. So what has been your experience of introducing the concept of participation with the staff and volunteers in the play hubs? It sounds like in this particular hub, it has been working already to a certain extent in any case. But the whole idea, the concept, do you recognize some of the things that Marina was saying about, well, we had been trying it, but now this brings it to a whole other level, and really the reflection on power and what it means in practice, and being secure that children can still be safe while also letting go some of that power. Do you recognize some of those ideas in Hungary as well, Eva?
Yes, definitely. I would recall the closing circle of the training. We had the training in two lots, two for the foundation of the methodology, and the third one mostly for planning. And at the end of the second day, at the closing circle, people had very personal reflections, and they said, okay, we didn't know what the whole thing was about. We assigned for this program because we trusted you that you bring innovative things and creative things to us. But now we started to reflect to our childhood and to our history of life, how we were treated as children. And now we started to understand the concept. So this is how they perceived first the training and the method.
And since the training, how has the experience been putting child participation into practice in Hungary, in the play hubs?
I think by the end of the third day, they came up with the whole idea of a participatory process, because they just had the idea to renovate the local library. And they really integrated the whole participatory idea, and they designed the process, how to design the space, how to involve not only the children, but the parents and also the professionals into the process.
Okay, so it's already happening. The practice is already changing as a result of this change in thinking, changing of mindset. We have another partner from Latvia, Christina Lipina. Can I bring Christina into the conversation now? This is another country, another context, but Christina and her organization have also been part of Toy for Inclusion from the very beginning. Christina, can you tell us about what play hubs look like in Latvia?
Yes, of course. And in the beginning, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or good all other parts of the day, whenever you are. In Latvia right now, we have just one play hub, and it's located in the city Jelgava, which is the fourth largest city of Latvia with about 55,000 inhabitants. And our play hub is based in a city NGO house, where we have a dedicated space to welcome children and families 3 times a week, 2 afternoons of weekdays and Saturday morning.
Okay. So you have this Saturday opening. So you also have participated in the training. You've been delivering the training. You've been encouraging the PlayHub staff to engage, and really embed child participation. What, if any, changes have you seen in the children and the families? Can you give us some examples of what you've been observing?
Yes, as Marina already mentioned, the child participation concept is not entirely new for play hubs. We already have many things, many features embedded in our everyday practice, like friendly environment with free accessibility for and choosing of play games and easy transformative environment with materials and furniture, as well as including children in the decision making and in choosing new activities and games, or in helping to shape the rules of the play hub together with the team and parents. But after the training, which we had 2 months ago, our staff started to focus more consciously on participation and to think more intentionally about possibilities, how to improve and promote this child participation. And I would like to show you to show just few very small examples, but I think they are really meaningful in this participation process. We have noticed that promoting of this participation have developed a real sense of agency for children, realizing that their voice actually has the consequences, that they have been heard and their ideas have been implemented. And for example, a small situation with 6-year-old child, a boy who was together with his father, they decided that they will build a house from the paper boxes. And once I did it, and after they were sharing their impressions about their achievements and about house, what they meant, the boy said that he especially liked it that his dad listened to him, and the dad didn't said, no, let's do it differently, but instead of that, he was asking where we are going to put the door. And when child choose a place for the doors, they really made the doors in that place. So it can seem very, very small thing, but it made the child feel important because he experienced how his idea become true and real.
And then you have also had examples of maybe Roma parents, mothers who aren't to feel a little bit threatened in services, but as a result of this, I understand they're feeling they are also being heard, that their views also count.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting to notice that this focusing more on child participation really help also for parents, and they are becoming more active by themselves. And we have this one example with the Roma mother. And recently, she took a big step by suggesting a book for joint reading sessions that they have at our play from time to time. And she just heard about this book during conversation at her daughter's kindergarten. And it was conversations among 2 other moms. And she heard about this book, and she suggested to read it at the play hub during this joint session, reading session, because she didn't have that book at home. So it was possibility for her child to read this book. And it can seem very small thing, but it's really it's for her it was important step, and for us it was really nice to be part of it.
Thank you very much, Christina, and indeed to Eva and Marina and Yvette for sharing these experiences. I mean, something that I'm really taking from listening to your experiences, that it's a process. It's about changing mindset, opening your eyes to thinking about things differently, and small, seemingly insignificant actions or shifts can actually be really, really key and memorable for the people involved, depending, on their prior experience and, taking quite brave actions, whether it's a mother, whether it's a young child. And as a whole program, we are going to be evaluating, documenting very closely the experiences of piloting child participation in the play hubs. But at this point, Alyosha, I would really like to open the floor to all of the participants in today's webinar. We're curious to hear how people are reacting, or if anybody has any questions for any of the participants, whether it's about Hungary or Croatia or Latvia, or curious to hear more. So are there any questions coming up? Please, unmute yourself or put in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, the broader audience today at this point.
Yeah, I already saw that there is some conversation and connection going on, so feel free to continue so if anyone has a question, unmute yourself, ask it, or write in the chat. But I'll be also sharing, since we still have like 4 minutes, I'm sharing our details so that you can contact us directly, Margaret and myself, or to the general ICDI. So any questions?
If you could share the screen again, we can look at those outcomes, our ambition for Toy for Inclusion. I mean, our dream for Toy for Inclusion is that there's going to be a participatory play hub in every community in Europe. We're starting with Europe, but as I say, we are already exploring with this concept in other countries in Africa too, in ICDI. So that's our dream. And if you just go back one slide to the outcomes, which I didn't, I really wanted to give time to listen to the implementing partners. What do we want to achieve? I mean, this is what we, even after 2 years, but you've already heard small changes are smaller and even more significant changes are already occurring. We want to embed participatory principles in local community engagement and decision-making processes, whether that's in the Play Hub, in local government, or in kindergartens, preschools. We also hope that children will be able to show greater agency, confidence, and sense of belonging and self-esteem as a result of this way of working, and that families and caregivers play a strengthened and gender-sensitive role in supporting democratic participation, which I think is more needed than ever before, given our current challenges in the world. And that finally, that formal and non-formal early childhood education services and play hubs promote community engagement for children 0 to 10 in effective and scalable ways. So if you just move to the last slide where our contact details, we would love to keep you informed about what we're learning, the new publications, particularly around child participation. All of the materials are publicly available, so they're downloadable from the Toy for Inclusion website. You see it there on the slide. You can contact us directly at ICDI, or indeed you can contact the local implementing partners. I know people have been exchanging details in the WhatsApp. This shows the logos of all of the partners. This is not just the people who you met today. There are partner organizations in all of the countries that I showed you on the map, and these are the logos of the organizations involved as well. And you will have access to the PowerPoint deck after this webinar. Is there anything else, Alyosha? I'm handing back to you to round up. Have I forgotten anything, or is there any final questions or comments, or indeed, and Marina, Yvette, or Ava, or Christina, if you would like to, if there's some really important message that you think we didn't capture today that it's good for people to leave with? This would be a good moment to say that too.
No, I think we set everything, and I think people have now a lot of information to process. I do also believe, as practitioner myself, that all of you who are attending today, that you've been also a bit challenged by the concept of participation. So you might start rethinking also your practice, the way how you engage with children, with communities and families you collaborate with, and how you in your own context can bring in a bit more of a participation. And yeah, since the world is telling us that we need to make the world a better place, since the ongoing crises that are just coming one after the other, I think shows us concretely that some concrete steps need to be done in many regards. So that would be from my end.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll be in touch.